Good evening from the University of Findlay, and welcome to the City Auditor Forum, sponsored by the Courier, UFTV, WFIN AM, and WLFC FM. I'm WFIN News Director Doug Jenkins, and I'll be serving as your co-moderator for tonight's event. Tonight's forum is an opportunity for you to find out more about the individuals running for Findlay City Auditor. Helping me moderate this evening will be Steve Dillon, the editorial writer for the Courier. We've both chosen the questions for this evening's forum, and no candidate is aware of what they'll be asked. The format for the forum consists of 2-minute opening statements by each candidate, as well as 2-minute closing statements for each candidate at the evening's end. In between the statements, we'll be asking questions of the candidates, and they'll have 60 seconds to respond. If Steve or I believe a follow-up is necessary, the candidate can be asked a follow-up question, and they'll have 60 seconds to respond to that as well. Our participants for this evening are Jim Staschiak and Spence. So with that said, let's get started. We'll begin with our opening statements, and we'll start first with Jim Staschiak.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am City Auditor Jim Staschiak, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today, and I'm humbled to be your city auditor. Experience matters, and it matters who your auditor is. The city auditor is essentially the chief financial officer for the city, a $70+ million business, responsible for critical functions, including all of the financial transactions for the city, $18 million in annual payroll, issuing the city's debt, administering our health plan and our workers' comp programs, investing $50+ million of taxpayer monies. The auditor is a key player in preparing the annual budgets. It is an elected position, but it should not be a political one. I am proud to have a direct hand in having saved the community in excess of $5 million through accomplishments in working with our health insurance, workers' comp, and our debt. I've built on the good works of my predecessors, and the auditor's staff is exceptional. I've proven to be a champion of fiscal planning for the city, so much so that the State Auditor's Office has specifically requested that I teach at the local government conference for the 2nd year in a row. And I've worked with elected officials and departments to create a 2-year operations budget, something very few communities in the state of Ohio have accomplished. I believe the community should be part of the budget process, which is why I was the first auditor to post all of our budget information online prior to the budget being adopted by our city council. Experience matters, and it matters who your auditor is. We've come a long way, but there's work to be done. I'm committed to finishing several planning initiatives. My goals are to complete a 5-year operations forecast, a long-term debt plan, a full analysis of our water, sewer, and storm systems. I am committed to showing our community that the city can operate responsibly with the hard-earned tax dollars that have been provided generously by our citizens. I look forward to being part of tonight's discussion and sharing why I wish to continue to earn your support.
Ms. Spence.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the sponsors, the University of Findlay, and Findlay Publishing Company for this opportunity to discuss the city auditor race. I'd also like to thank the people of Findlay for giving me the opportunity to represent them on City Council and for the continued support in the upcoming election. As a City Council at Large representative, I've dedicated my public service to addressing constituents' questions and concerns, engaging in committee projects, and making responsible financial decisions for the advancement of Findlay. I am running for Findlay City Auditor because I'm committed to Findlay and I care about its citizens. I've been in public service role in Findlay and the Hancock County community for over 14 years. I'm very proud of my community, its leaders, and its people. This position would provide me with a new opportunity to use my formal education in business administration and public relations, and I'm really committed to the next level of public service. Accuracy and accountability are qualities essential to the position of auditor, and I am dedicated to financial stability. The city depends on accurate and timely financial information. Budgeting and planning are essential to the success of our community. Revenue projections are a critical first step in the planning process, and if elected, I will make it my first priority to provide accurate revenue projections. I'm also committed to bringing a much-needed collaboration leadership style to the position. I have built good working relationships with my co-council members, the city's administration, and county representatives. Our city works best when all of our elected officials work together towards the common goal of community prosperity. I'm experienced, well-educated, and ready to accept the challenging position of City Auditor. I am asking for your vote on May 5th. Thank you.
All right, we'll now begin our question and answer portion of tonight's forum. Steve Dillon will have the first question. He'll ask the first two, and the first question goes to Mr. Stasiak.
Please define, if you would, the role you believe the city auditor should play in Findlay's government.
Well, that's a great question. The city auditor is a very special position. We are a statutory city. If you think of it in that role, the auditor and the law director both establish the financial and the legal boundaries with which the city has to operate. The mayor and her administration operate the city, and it's council's job to allocate the money and provide the guidance that they wish the city to be operated within. That's a huge role, and it's a very big part of how the city auditor's office works. The auditor must be objective, and that's a major part of this. The auditor is a check and balance, but can be a super source and resource for information to make sure that things are constantly done properly prior to the being done. The auditor should not advocate for one department or another, because it should not advocate at the expense of one department or another. The auditor's job is how much, not what for.
Same question, Ms. Spence?
I'm sorry, will you repeat the question?
Sure would. Give your definition of the role you believe the city auditor should play in Findlay's government.
Sure. The city auditor is the chief financial advisor for the city. Should not be involved in policy making, however, provide sound financial information. There are many aspects to the role of city auditor, including making the financial forecasting, doing the investments, a lot of work on preparing for workers' comp claims and payments. The city auditor is responsible for taking in all of the city's revenue, and then also for making all the payments out for all the different departments. And of course, it has a huge responsibility in making the budget for the next year, fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. The next question will go to you, Ms. Spence, initially. When people think of contested political races, more often they think of roles like mayor, city council, county commissioner. Why should people be interested in this particular race?
People should be interested in all publicly elected races, for that matter, but specifically in this one because our community is strong and vibrant, but I think that we can do a better job of collaborating with other elected officials and within the city and within the county. And so I would say that that is one of the strengths that I will bring to this campaign for the position of city auditor.
Same question.
You know, it's oddly exciting to talk about the finance office. You know, it's a strange thing. It isn't normally a race that you would see contested, but it's a vital, important part. It matters who your auditor is in the city of Findlay. It matters what the auditor's office does, because in bringing the compliance to the city and stepping forward and making sure that the city operates properly and within the constraints as outlined by the state. Look at what we've accomplished so far. Look at what we've done with the 2-year operations budget. Look at what we've done with the 5-year capital plan. Look at the things that are going on in the private sector that the government, the city of Findlay, is going to have to dovetail into to help continue. Findlay's a boom town. It was a boom town 100 years ago. It's the job of your elected officials to boom the whole town, to make sure everything is progressing properly and we're moving forward. The city auditor is the source and the financial compliance officer for that entire city, to make sure as we move forward and do exciting, creative things with the private sector, that we do them properly and within the laws of the state of Ohio.
Okay. Our next question will go to Mr. Staschiak first. Actually, both of you have said that long-term planning is something that's vital to this office and a good thing. How do you ensure the accuracy of revenue projections when we're talking about terms of 2 years or even 5 years?
Well, there's multiple ways to do that. First off, we've taken the first step in creating a 2-year budget. The revenue projections and the accuracy of the revenue projections depend on the information in housing, and that's a huge source of revenue. So that accuracy has come from the income tax department, from our water billing department, for water and sewer, from the individual departments that deal with the individual components of the budget. We're working with it to project forward. In general, our income tax, or excuse me, our income estimates are running between 2 and 5% accuracy. Long term, we build on that second year of the budget, which is very easy to do, and then from there you use that as a basis with the history. The last 3 years gives us a pretty good basis for history to move forward. But a long-term projection, it's not just the revenue that matters, it's the expense side as well. And a long-term fiscal plan is a roadmap, but it's okay to take detours off that roadmap. It's going to change, it's not going to be perfect. It's a guide for us to follow and to adjust to show where weaknesses are in the future, where strengths are in the future, so we can properly allocate resources moving forward.
Ms. Spence, same question? In terms of long-term planning and looking at 2 and 5 year budgets, how do you ensure accuracy in those numbers for such a long term?
Sure. Well, I agree with a lot of what Auditor Staschiak had to say as far as, a plan is a working plan, it's a moving plan, so, things do change. But in order to provide accurate forecasts, you need to look at quite a few things. You need to look at the history of revenue coming in, and you also need to look at the departments and definitely from the tax administrator. The tax administrative office has put, along with city council and the administration in the plan, a program where we can now count on more accurate revenue numbers because we have some companies that we're not taking in estimated payments. The tax administrator looks at inconsistencies and fluctuations in that collection, and so it's helped us to get a better idea of actual money that's available for city council and administration to utilize.
Okay. We'll follow up. We'll go to Mr. Staschiak and Ms. Spence. I'll have a chance for rebuttal. You mentioned that first of all, you have to know where the money is coming from, talking with the income tax department, things like that. Are there ways that the auditor and the income tax department can better collaborate on those numbers, or are they better left alone to work the way they do?
That is the question that our city needs to look into further. It's been stated for years by multiple audit firms that our structure is unusual and not necessarily the best structure that the city of Findlay should have. The auditor's office has some functions that are typically held under an administrative role, HR roles and things like that. The income tax department sitting under the administration or under the mayor is very unusual in the state of Ohio, and it causes certain issues. To answer your question directly, absolutely there needs to be communication between the city auditor and the income tax administrator. The income tax administrator has some obligations. There are confidentialities that have to be kept, some liabilities that are there because of that. We need to move forward. We're going to have to identify the best way to do that long term so that we can continue to improve. There's risks in the structure that we have, and there's rewards in changing, but the rewards should be seen citywide, not just because of moving one department. Maybe it's a situation where the city needs to really explore getting those functions back into the true financial categories and administrative categories where they belong.
Okay. Same question to you, Ms. Spence. Are there ways that the auditor's office can better work with the income tax department?
There are absolutely ways that the auditor's office can work better with the income tax department. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the Ohio Revised Code prohibits some information being shared between two departments, but it doesn't mean that they cannot have a good working relationship and share information that is not prohibited. In a lot of areas, though, where maybe information is not allowed to be provided, there's still ways and means of being able to get information in our community. I mean, we can go to actual businesses and talk to CFOs and see where they think that their numbers are coming in, which will give the city a better idea of what estimated revenues, are out there and what we can anticipate receiving.
Okay. Our next question, we'll start with you, Ms. Spence. This sort of dovetails with the follow-up question there, but what is one area where you see there is room for improvement in the auditor's office?
Sure. First, I'd like to start by saying that in my very short political career, I have been both the new candidate and the incumbent. So I realize that it's sometimes difficult to say what you would do better. Jim is definitely a very formidable candidate, and I know that he's worked very hard for our community. With that being said, I definitely think that the area that we need the most work in the auditor's office is within collaboration, teamwork, and the ability to work with not just the administration, though it's very necessary, but with department heads, with business leaders, with the community at large.
Same question to you, Mr. Staschiak.
Teamwork and collaboration is huge. I'm proud to say we have a wonderful relationship with all the departments in the city. We work with all the departments in the city, and we have certainly been a super resource for many of the departments. Matter of fact, we received a noteworthy accomplishment mentioned in the state performance audit due to the processes we put in place and how closely we work with those departments in preparing the annual budgets, which we're a key part of each year. Now, collaboration, I guess there's two things here that I want to clarify. First, there's collaboration, and certainly that is very, very important, and communication is a huge part of that. To keep communication open, what I've done is I have 2 standard meetings that are set each week and left there and have been there since early 2013, so that anyone from the administration that has an issue can come to my office, or I can set up and meet with them, and they've got that time, whether it be an hour or 2 hours booked. That's Monday at 9, Friday at 9:30. We're going to continue to do that and make sure that's there. But sometimes it's not.
Go ahead and wrap it up here.
Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but we have to say no, because government doesn't always have common sense with its rules and regulations, and sometimes that's interfered with things.
Okay. The next question comes back to you, Mr. Staschiak. There has been discussion about the way certain business taxes can be deferred to the final quarter of the year instead of quarterly. Do you agree or disagree with that practice, and why?
Well, so that everybody understands it, what's happening is certain businesses are being permitted not to make their estimated tax payments, or payments are being refused until October of the following year. So what we're doing is, in 2015, it's my understanding from the income tax administrator, right now approximately 40 businesses are being told their taxes are going to get deferred until October or until sometime in 2015. So the long and the short of it is, we're not treating all taxpayers the same. I think all taxpayers should be treated the same under the rules of law. That is just the basis of government. There should not be exceptions for rules. And the methodology, what happened was, there was a reason in the past when people thought, holy smokes, what are we going to do if we have to make a big tax return on an income tax payment that's large? We won't have the money. So they wanted to give the income tax administrator the ability to defer these payments. However, you've taken a role that is traditionally an elected official's role, plus we have an income tax board who has significant authority over the income tax office, and they've said, we're going to cede that decision-making authority to one single individual in the office who works for the mayor, and the mayor, with all respect, is a political position. So it changes the dynamic of how those things are done.
Spence, your feeling on that?
Actually, it wasn't that they were looking at a situation that could have potentially happened where there could be a major payment that needed to be reimbursed. What happened was that we were in that situation, and the city had spent money that they anticipated having available to them, which really wasn't the case because of a large overpayment. So I absolutely agree with this policy. We're not just picking, 40 apply for, that we do business with. It's based on a fluctuation in their estimates. It's closely monitored, and the outcome is that we have better understanding of what revenue is available to utilize for the good of the community. So this is one situation where I would definitely have to disagree with Auditor Staschiak. I think that the council made the right move in putting this plan in place, and I would support the continuation.
Okay. Just a brief follow-up, Jim, on that. Is there any room for a compromise or a different resolution?
Oh, absolutely.
What would it be?
Isn't that the solution to everything, is working together and find the best answer? Again, let's go back to some of the experts that work around the state. The state contracted auditors and the auditors that have looked at this situation say the rule as put in place today jeopardizes our ability to make fully informed decisions in the budget year that those taxes should be collected. In 2012, it was millions of dollars we deferred. In 2013, I'm not sure how much was deferred because it wasn't shared. In 2014, we deferred $2.8 million, as I was informed by the income tax administrator. So we would have $2.8 million more cash to work with for making capital improvements, operational decisions, potentially bringing safety forces on or service forces on, if we collected those monies in the years they were due. So they said there should be a threshold at which that decision is looked at either by the income tax board or the power completely taken away from the income tax administrator. But the recommendation by the state contracted auditor is that that is looked at and something be done to take away some of those risks that are there because of the current policy.
Ms. Spence, would you like to reply?
Will you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Well, it's basically, is there a compromise that could be had to?
I think that the city has already looked at and actually put in place a compromise. We're now looking at installment and accepting installment payments, which is quite different than the estimated payments because they're known due payments. I'm not familiar with the recommendation from the state auditor's office that Jim's alluding to, but I do know I've had multiple conversations with our tax administrator, and I do know that because of having this in place, we went from having a large sum up to $2.5 million worth of monies that had come in that needed to go back out, that we don't have that anymore, or it has reduced significantly to the point of roughly $300,000.
Thank you. The next question will go to you, Ms. Spence. There is a perceived friction between the auditor's office and the administration. Do relations between the sides need to be smooth for city government to operate efficiently?
I think that it's safe to say that it's more than a perceived friction, and I do think that absolutely we need to have better open lines of communication. I do understand and appreciate Auditor Staschiak's point that you can't always say yes, but you shouldn't always say no as well. So I think that there's a lot of room for communication, for collaboration, and for bettering those relationships. As a city council representative, I can say with absolute surety that I do have great working relationships, not only with our current administration, but with the previous administration and the administration before that, and the council members, the community. I've built some great working relationships, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you.
I could say that there's always room to improve communication everywhere. I talked to the Republican Party about this several times. There was a lot of sensationalism with regards to what the relationship was, particularly during the budgets and the layoffs and whatnot. There was a lot of tension and a lot of tough decisions, a lot of stress, and a lot of things that go on out of proportion, particularly with regard to that. Having the beyond overall policy, making sure that also knows what coming out and go down there and go through that. happen time and time again. If we couldn't work together, we wouldn't have a 2-year budget. If we couldn't work together, we wouldn't have accomplished the planning items that we've done already. If we couldn't work together, we wouldn't have been able to work and put together the projects and order them in a fashion that allowed me to go out and issue $8 million worth of debt at less than 1% interest. I had to work intimately with Paul and the administration to make that happen. In terms of the mayor, we've met regularly. Sometimes we meet in the conference room, sometimes we meet in my office, sometimes we meet in her office. I will always act professionally and respectfully in dealing with anyone within the city, and I will always make sure we're there to help where that help is needed. So in terms of that, we're going to move forward. We're going to continue to improve on this great city. We're not going to, and I'm not going to stop.
Just one follow-up on that. Spence, you mentioned not always saying no. Can you give a specific example of what you mean by that?
Absolutely. It would seem to me that when the administration works on a new idea or city council works on a new idea, the current relationship and the current environment, usually, we get together in our committee meetings and we have conversations, and instead of trying to work together to figure out how we can move forward, usually we get negative information about how things aren't possible, how we can't work together, how we can't accomplish our goals. One of the example of that was when we worked on the CRA expansions, the community investment expansions, and it was a great tool for our community. I stand behind my work on that. We were able to give the Alliance Economic Development people in our community the resources that they needed to be able to bring in the big corporations like McLean. And unfortunately, from the auditor's office, all the information that we got was about how we would be destroying our tax base, and we wouldn't be able to provide that tool to the community.
Mr. Staschiak, 1 minute to rebut.
I guess I'll have to say, with all due respect, you're misinformed on that issue. Initially, when that was proposed by HRPC by Mr. Hopka, there were some statements made that were completely incorrect. There wasn't an understanding that in the 80s we used CRA and used some tools there to create some negotiations that ultimately allowed us to pave streets, put water and sewer lines in, and pay for infrastructure that created a phenomenal development. My statement at the time was, we have to remember that we were able to do that then. And if we extend this and expand this CRA today without keeping that into consideration, we could jeopardize our ability to have those negotiations, which today has resulted in a citywide CRA, which is phenomenal. It works well with the TIFs that we have in place, and it's allowed us to negotiate very strategic agreements with Marathon and with McLean coming in, where they're contributing, in one case, I think it's up to $5 million of tax money, $5 million, excuse me, of their money that they're saving in tax money to put in towards streets and intersections. It's a phenomenal thing. The second thing, I have no idea what committee meeting she's talking about in terms of me not working, but the second thing is the state checkbook. That's going to be phenomenal. We have done so much to open our books and put things online. The state checkbook is me working with the mayor to accomplish something special for the city.
Okay. Well, we've reached halftime of our forum here tonight. We'll take a 2-minute break when we come back. The second night of tonight's Auditors Forum.